In the annals of Britain's UFO sightings, we're accustomed to certain shapes. The classic disc or saucer, the cigar, and more recently the triangle, black and silent, sliding across the night sky. But hidden among the files are reports of other shapes, unusual reports that leave witnesses grasping for words, making them fall back on ancient images or the language of faith or myth or of biblical vision. One such case emerged not from a rural parish or lonely moor, but from Britain's industrial heartland, the city of Birmingham. Here, witnesses described a craft unlike any other. Not a disc, not a light, not a conventional machine of the air, but a vast, rectangular vessel, glowing and immense, containing motionless figures seen through illuminated panels. Now, this case has slipped into obscurity, but it remains pretty extraordinary as a close encounter in Britain's history. To understand this case, we've got to understand first the setting. Birmingham in the middle decades of the 20th century was a city rebuilt in the shadow of war. Only a few years earlier, its skies had echoed with the drone of the Luftwaffe bombers and the thunder of air raid sirens. Searchlights had raked the night sky, and barrage balloons had floated overhead, tethered against enemy attack. This was a population intimately familiar with machines of the air. They knew the shape of an aircraft. They knew the silhouette of a zeppelin and the form of a balloon. They knew the sounds of engines and the patterns of navigation lights. And against this backdrop came the age of the flying saucer. From Kenneth Arnold's sighting over Mount Rainier in 1947 to the saucer flaps that gripped America and Europe in the 1950s, UFOs were seeping into popular consciousness. And Britain was no exception. The Warminster Thing in Wiltshire would soon terrify a community with unearthly noises. RAF radar operators would chase unknowns across their screens, and the Ministry of Defence, quietly and with little publicity, began to file away reports in dossiers that would only emerge decades later. So it was in this atmosphere, an industrial city with a population that knew the skies, that witnesses looked up and saw something they just couldn't explain. Witnesses described a vast rectangular craft moving slowly and deliberately across the Birmingham sky. It wasn't round, it wasn't a triangle, it had the solidity of architecture, as though an entire building had taken to the air. And most extraordinary of all were the figures. Through illuminated panels, perhaps windows or perhaps translucent sections of the hull, witnesses saw tall, glowing, humanoid forms. They didn't move, they did not gesture, they were not seen operating controls. Instead, they stood silently, as if posed, bathed in a soft radiance. The impression was less of a crew, and rather more like a display, like the icons in a cathedral window, figures in a tableau, gazed upon, rather than gazing out. And so the witnesses reached for the only word that seemed to capture both the shape of the craft and the solemnity of its contents, and they called it an ark. And the people who reported the Birmingham Ark were not eccentrics chasing saucers across the countryside. They were ordinary citizens in an industrial city, describing what they had seen just as best they could. They didn't claim knowledge of extraterrestrials, they didn't preach cosmic gospels, as so many others of the era did, and instead they simply described what was before their own eyes. A rectangular craft, luminous figures, and the movement was slow and deliberate. To them, it was as real as any aircraft, but profoundly unlike anything that an aircraft could be. Why an ark, though? The choice of word is not an accident. It does carry immense weight in our collective imagination, doesn't it? The Ark of Noah, the vessel of survival, carrying life through the flood, or the Ark of the Covenant, a container of divine presence carried before the people of Israel, feared and revered. The solar bark of ancient Egypt, the ship that carried the sun god Ra across the heavens, fighting nightly against darkness. Across cultures and across centuries, the ark has been the vessel of salvation, of covenant, and of cosmic journey. And when Birmingham's witnesses saw a rectangular vessel filled with shining figures, well, this is what they saw. The choice of language is telling. It suggests that these sightings spoke not only to their eyes, but to the deepest levels of their psyches. Skeptics, of course, will offer explanations. Could have been a barrage balloon, for example, a relic of wartime defences. Balloons don't glow with an internal light, do they? Nor do they display humanoid occupants. Could it have been a secret military experiment? Britain's aviation industry was indeed active in Birmingham and Coventry, but no experimental craft of the time matched the description of a floating, luminous, rectangular ark. Could it have been an optical illusion? Reflections of buildings and lights distorted through atmospheric layers, perhaps, producing the impression of a structure. It's possible, but the consistency of witness reports and the clarity of the humanoid figures seen through the windows or luminous hull challenged that explanation. Or was it, as some psychologists might argue, a projection of cultural archetypes, the human mind imposing ancient patterns on some ambiguous stimuli? Perhaps. But the ark remains one of the least likely projections. A structured, rectangular craft with glowing figures, not a disc, not a light, not a star. It's not entirely without parallel, this case. In South America, witnesses in the 1960s described houses in the sky, rectangular luminous blocks drifting overhead, sometimes with figures visible within. In Portugal, the miracle of Fatima in 1917 was interpreted by thousands as a religious vision, but descriptions of a glowing, structured disc suggest a phenomenon that blurred the line between faith and machines. And in Britain there have been occasional reports of craft that seem more like temples or palaces of light than vehicles, actual structures with windows and lit interiors and figures within. Now, if you take the reports at face value, you have to ask, is this something deliberately cloaking itself in archetypes of ours? Carl Jung argued that flying saucers themselves were an archetypal mandala of sorts, circular symbols of wholeness, projected into the sky during a time of global anxiety, and maybe the ark is another such archetype, a vessel of salvation, a container for the chosen, and a bridge between worlds. And if that's the case, then the ark wasn't just a machine, but it was more of a message, a projection designed specifically to resonate with ancient patterns in our human minds. To see an ark in the sky is to be reminded of survival through catastrophe, of covenant between humanity and higher powers, and of divine presences moving across the heavens. And if this phenomenon, let's call it, has an intelligence, then in Birmingham it chose a form that spoke not of science fiction, but of ancient faith. Arthur C. Clarke observes that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and if the Birmingham Ark was a technological craft, its design defies our understanding. What purpose would a vast rectangular structure even serve in flight? Why luminous figures posed like statues? Why a vessel that resembles a biblical ark rather than a functional, aerodynamic aircraft? Unless, of course, the function was not flight, but theatre. Maybe it was just meant to be a vision, to be experienced. It might not have been for travel at all. It might have been a performance, a manifestation, or a message, just to let us know that something was there, watching us. The Birmingham Ark hasn't entered the canon of British UFO lore. It's actually rarely mentioned and almost forgotten, overshadowed by Rendlesham and Warminster and countless other cases. And why? Was it too strange? Too symbolic, perhaps? Was it too religious in its language to fit the standard UFO narrative? Flying saucers could be debated in terms of aircraft and technology, you see. The Ark could not. It pulled the conversation into scripture and archetype, which is territory less comfortable for investigators. Indeed, it leads us into the realms of irreconcilable speculation. I suppose that the efforts of people who research are automatically focused onto the things that they think they might have mileage on, as it were. Does this case have legs? Does it go anywhere? And it's rather like that choosing the topics for these YouTube videos. Does this have enough to be interesting? Does it lead anywhere else? Are there any other links or follow-ups that I can do? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes what you have is what you have. And this is one of those cases. A luminous, rectangular structure in the sky. And for now, that's all I can give you. For those of you who want to go deeper, there is the Eeries Vault Patreon. Here you'll find the evidence. Original newspaper clippings, forgotten publications, rare documents. You'll see the raw material behind the stories, and you'll gain access to exclusive videos, some filmed on location at the very places we discuss, and you'll be able to watch private follow-up videos to the cases already covered on the main channel. It's not just about watching here, it's about joining the search, and by supporting the Vault, you help to keep the archive alive, help uncover more material, and help to bring these stories into the light. And if you've ever wondered what all these marks are on this map here, well, patrons get access to this interactive encounters map to peruse at their leisure. It gets updated regularly and will grow to be one of the most comprehensive encounters maps in the world. If you've ever wanted to be closer to the investigation, if you've ever wanted to see what lies behind the curtain, then Patreon is where it begins. And with numerous membership options, what are you waiting for? Head over to the Vault. From the depths of the Vault, this is Eeries Vault Live. Every Friday at 9 p.m. GMT, the lines are open. UFOs, aliens, ghosts, strange creatures, time slips, encounters you cannot explain. If you've seen something unusual, if something has haunted you, followed you, or simply left you wondering, then this is your place to tell it. Call in and share your story. You can watch the show live on YouTube or stream it directly at eeriesvault.com. And if you're too shy to call, then you can email ahead of the show at eeriesvault@gmail.com, and I will read your story out for you on air. That's Eeries Vault Live, Friday nights, 9 p.m. GMT. Be part of it. The YouTube show is only a part of the Vault. Beyond the broadcast is the archive. And at eeriesvault.com you'll find our growing library of case files, first-hand accounts of the unexplained, written reports from people who lived through something strange. And we need yours. If you've carried a story for years, if you've never had the chance to put it into words, and this is where it belongs. Your report will stand alongside others, building a record that may one day help us see patterns that we cannot see alone. And it's easy. Go to eeriesvault.com, open the Case Files page, and hit the Submit a Case button. Fill in the details and send it on its way. Because strange events pass quickly into silence unless someone records them. Don't let your story vanish. Put it in the vault.